Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 178 of Kouryer podcast. And as you can see, yes, my background is a little bit different. I'm still in the same house, but long story short, there's a lot of repairs going on in my house. So yeah, I had to twist my table over here. So yeah, that hence the new background. And well, our today's guest is Miss Stefanie Grunwald. She's a pixel artist and senior platform engineer at Adobe from Hamburg, Germany. And of course, before we get into the all the questions and stuff like that, let me just quickly mention that in the for contact section of the captions, you can see her Instagram ID, her Twitter handle, her links, basically, those my link, 3 link things. There's a link to all her other socials and stuff, and a link to her website, all of the captions as well. And actually, if you go to her website, there's like a little cookies pop on that, every site has, and it's like really cute. She actually customized it herself. So yeah, I think that was kind of interesting in her own, art style. And that's pretty much it. Oh, just before we continue, there's an important announcement as well. You can also find the link to our Patreon as well, which is also in the mining section as well, and captions as well, which you can go pledge, and there are a lot of cool tiers that you can go with. Just go check it out if you're interested into pixel art and that stuff. All right. So, all right, with that quick introduction out of the way, let's jump into the first signature question, which I ask everyone on this podcast, which is, give us a little introduction on how you got into the world of visual arts and design. Like, basically, tell us the story of, the moment that made you realize, oh, I want to become an artist. You know what I mean? Tell us your whole journey, basically.
Yeah. I was an avid Tumblr user back then, and I think in 2015, 2016. And back then, I stumbled upon an artist, 8pixel, or back then she was called Softwaring on Tumblr, and she just started making pixel art. And she was the first artist that I noticed did not make art for games. She just made it for the pleasure of it. And she shared tutorials, she shared her entire process, and you could see her getting better and better. And that was something other artists popped up as well in the space. I saw KLD Pixel, I saw Gutti Creum, like a lot of artists that just emerged on my Tumblr feed because I kept clicking and was interested. And seeing the progress they made and how good they got, I decided, let me just try and do it myself. I do not need to publish it. I just need to try it out for myself. If it works out, I publish it. If it doesn't, I just delete it and never tell anyone about it. And when I published the first thing that I tried, which was a scene here in Hamburg with the new opera house that was opened, I don't know, I found pictures that had such cozy colors. It was a nighttime scene, so I just tried to do that. And it turned out pretty well. And when I published that on Twitter, I got such nice reception of people who felt like me. Oh, wow, people do pixel art just for the sake of it and not just for games or anything. I felt like, okay, let's just continue. Let's just see where it goes. And to this date, I still have my full-time job. I only do pixel art on the side. But that was for me the little, that was a turning point when I found, okay, if I make this and publish this, I actually have a nice community of folks who enjoy it as well. And this has been growing ever since.
Well, that's very nice to hear. And here's the thing, pixel art and voxel art is one of those fields in art where you don't really have to go get try-hardy and just learn everything and get gritty and dirty in fundamentals, which of course fundamentals help you everywhere, don't get me wrong, but it's like one of those things that learning process for them is kind of chill. It's kind of relaxing. I mean, in my subjective opinion, but and I think you can agree with that as well. If you try to get good at digital 2D, digital painting and illustration, it's still fun, but it requires another, set of focus and a different set of, brain acumen, basically. I'm not necessarily saying it's harder because everyone's talents are different, but for me personally, I think I don't know how to explain it. It's like, for me, voxel art is like mosaic working on a vase, imagine you made a clay vase by yourself and you start, doing mosaic work on it. It's kind of relaxing and it's chill and it's tangible in a sense, And I think that's what's beautiful really about this sort of, medias. And by the way, have you seen that, because of the whole resurgence of NFTs in 2021, a lot of voxel artists, got really popular, and voxel art is actually the meta right now in a sense. What do you think about that? Are you going to also approach and try voxel art as well?
I think voxel art or 3D for me has always been difficult. And the nice thing, what I can see as a benefit about voxel art is that you set up the scene and you can still shift it around. You can change the angle. You can still decide if you want to capture a scene. Oh no, I got the composition wrong. Let me just shift that around a bit. That is a bit easier for 3D than it is for 2D. But it's such a different skill that I wouldn't dare to touch it, at least right now. At least for me, I found a way to just sketch out the scenes I want to draw. And so I don't need to. It has happened in the past where I've looked at a finished piece and was like, oh no, I should have changed the angle. This has happened a lot of times. But otherwise, voxel art is so different that I feel, okay, that is their own niche. I let them do their thing. I keep in my pixel art niche. And perhaps, if I may disagree a bit, I found pixel art a bit harder than traditional art or than normal digital art, because you need to do all the blending yourself. When you have a brush and you just mix it with some opacity, that works nicely, but in pixel art, there's no such thing. So you will need to find the middle color and then need to make sure the blending looks okay, or otherwise you just have strokes of color. It's not necessarily easier, it just has different challenges, I would say. And same with voxel art. Making something look good in 3D, completely different story from making something look good in 2D.
Yeah, definitely. And about 2D art, yes. I mean, if you go and try to find some of the, like, those large illustrations that some crazy pixel artists do, you'll be amazed that all the renderings is all in pixels. It's not actually illustrations. Like, you find some of those, a lot. And yes, there's a it's. Let me explain it this way. It's easy to learn, but hard to master in a sense. Like, I mean, you could maybe say that about illustration, but I think the learning curve for pixel art is much lower, if I'm not mistaken. Even at the basic level, you can do stuff, but if you want to actually make something at basic level in illustration, or I don't know, to the digital art, or just art in general, not just digital, you actually need to have a pretty basic understanding of multiple set of fundamentals. But the pixel art, you can get away in the beginning, of course. If you want to do digital, like pixel art, you need to learn all those fundamentals pretty well. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one of those things that I really, like, myself want to get into in the future. Like, there's, everyone has a list of, things they want to get into future. Like, I have like origami, like voxel art and pixel art, but they're just in the list, they're just waiting. And hopefully one day I'll get to them. And yeah, but I really like, especially pixel art style as well when the artist actually, does it well. And one of the reasons that I think I could really connect with it is because, of course, I mean, it's a kind of cliche answer, I'm sorry, but a lot of the games from the past are in pixel art style, and it kind of makes me reminiscent of my childhood in a bit. I guess that's a justification I could find for it, but yeah. And by the way, do you have any favorite games or movies or anything that's been done in pixel art style that you've really been impressed by?
I mean, the obvious answer, I've played Monkey Island and all the LucasArts games, of course. So I do have that history. Other than that, I grew up with the Game Boy. I grew up with the Nintendo DS. So pixel art has just been with me all my life. There's not one game that stands out where I would say, oh, this is something that stands out to me as pixel art, apart from obviously games that have been done today. There is How We Know We Are Live, for example. That's a game that's been done by, I think, a Swedish pixel artist just recently. And it was just so moody and so slow and just based on story and not really on many pixel art games you find are RPGs and you need to be fast, timing-based games. And that was a game that was just based on story. So that really stood out as a really, really cool game. And of course, Thimbleweed Park as just a recent point-and-click adventure that was really fun. And it was great to see, because if you look at the art of that game, it's not pure pixel art. There are light effects in it, but they are so subtle you don't notice them. And I think Mark Ferrari, so the artist behind that game, how did he put it? He called it 8-bit-ish art. So it's not 8-bit art, but 8-bit-ish. It's something that you would expect in something like 2020, but it's not pure pixel art, right? It has this extra that you would expect from new tech at this day and age. So that was something, at least art-wise and content-wise and fun-wise, that was a game that stood out as well.
All right. And actually, there's a couple of games that actually came to my mind that's really utilized pixel art really well. One of them is, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's pretty recent. It's called. It's kind of has a weird name, but its name is Death Trash. It's a post-apocalyptic settings. It's a lot of gore and just gunfights and stuff like that. But the pixel art is beautiful, like taken masterfully done. Like that's what's really got my attention. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I think if anyone's interested in games with pixel art, you should at least check it out on Steam to see how it is. And here's an interesting question that I'm kind of intrigued by as well myself, which is how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a new piece, basically? What does the structure of your pipeline look like whenever you want to work on it? For example, one of your pieces, like those landscapes and illustrations in pixel art.
Yeah, it always first starts with inspiration. I rarely sit down and think, okay, now I draw something, and don't already have in mind what I want to draw. I do curate a huge list on Pinterest of just things I like, mostly nighttime scenes, something like highways and forlorn cities or something. And just sometimes you stumble upon a thing, that's the mood. That's the thing I want to capture. And then I would go ahead and just sketch in black and white. So there's no color, there's no fancy stuff, and just sketch out what I want the scene to look like. Like if there are lampposts, where would they go? If there's a highway, would it curve? If so, where? And I would try out different things. So those are really fast sketches, 5 minutes maximum that they take. And when I think, oh, this is a nice composition, and I start to add color to it, really just in chunks, in blocks across the canvas. And then I start detailing from there. So I really learned the hard way. If I go wrong in the early stages and misplace something, it's really, really hard and expensive. It costs a lot of time to change it later. So yeah, that's really the process. You go from inspiration, something that you want to capture the atmosphere or mood of. You set up the scene. What do you want to be there? Cars, highways, lampposts, buildings, anything. And then I go in and with the color, I try to capture the mood. And then comes the detailing part. And I would say until the sketch with the color is finished, that's about 20% of the time. Or 80% of the time is really spent in adding the details, animating it. The animation usually takes a lot of time as well, because you do it frame by frame. Yeah. And then finished piece.
Yeah, but I think, those cities, like those night style, like for example, Tokyo cityscapes, pixel arts that got really popular like 10 years ago, that are some of them are still being used like in the cover of like, those 24-hour videos on YouTube, which are like, lo-fi radio or something. And the background is like a pixel art animation. And I think that sort of trend kind of, I think, really helped catapult pixel art in the scene as well, like in the past couple of years, I think. What do you think about that?
I would say there's just a lot of people, even though they are really young, that have started doing pixel art. Back in 2015, it was a handful of artists, and that was it. You wouldn't find anyone else. And then suddenly it picked up and people started doing that. And with the advent of game engines that were easy to use, it was such a low barrier for people to start doing games. And especially with that conception of, I think pixel art is easier than doing normal digital art. You had a lot of people just try it out and eventually stick to it and remain pixel artists until this day. And if you look at the community now, it's huge. There's so many people doing it. And now that it feels like a community, it's exponential, right? It has taken off and is now a thing of its own.
Yeah, and all right, here's an interesting bit I want to actually talk about, on the podcast, which is right now we're at episode 178, right? At episode 177, I interviewed an artist by the name of Sanguine, and here's the thing: he had a very stark similarity with you, which was both of you are actually really professional programmers, which is kind of a contrast to the art thing, And so here's the thing that I think for two reasons, I think your story is actually kind of inspiring for me as well. The first one is that you've been like you've been professional at one thing first, then you switch to art. You weren't one of those like stories like, oh, since I was a kid I used to always draw and I got to art school. That type of story you get. You get it, but it wasn't like that, and you just followed your passion. And I think that's the main thing that should be the core of whatever we do. I mean, yes, the society is being formed in a way that we need to get money. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not talking like black and white, but you get the point. Always, following your passion will get you the places that you would really enjoy, I think. And so first, tell us about your story of like, what led you to programming first, and your experience at Adobe. First, let's start off with that, then we move on to the next section.
Sure. At a very, very young age, my father already used computers. So I was born in 1985, and I think by the age of 3 or 4, I was already sitting next to my father, and I was always get his old computers. So I could fiddle around, do my first pixel art there. There are no records of this, but just doodling around as a kid. And there were, back then at least, there were books with just programs like, I don't know, a lotto number generator or things like that. And you would need to type the code, like just look at the book and type it out, and then you would have a working program. And even just back then, that was incredibly exciting because you could make things happen. And with what you said earlier, I do see a lot of connect between, for me at least, between software engineering and art. Because it's you have a thing in mind, you want to solve a problem, or you want to make something happen, and you can just do it. And that's just been with me all my life. So I had computers, I had video games. Like I was a really technical household and family, if you want to call it that. And so when I graduated from school, I was like, okay, like now what? Okay, let's go with informatics. Let's go with computer science. And so I didn't really have the question of what I would do with my life, although I decided in 2016 that I was torn between should I do computer science or should I do physics? And then I decided to just, you know what, let me just go with physics, because why not? And then I started to study physics, theoretical physics, and actually finished that degree. No idea what to do with it, but I have it now. And I feel like, okay, like now I don't need to ask myself, what if? And that's the same how I went with art. So I don't need to ask myself, what if? And because you asked about Adobe, before I joined Adobe, I was at a startup that was focused on to build websites and make that easy for people to just sign up and build a website. Nowadays, that's like normal. You just Google it, how to make a website. You have plenty of services to choose from. Back then, it wasn't. And I was, I think, member number 7 on that startup, and I left when there were 250 people. But I always felt, this is such a small scope. Like when you program something there, you reach a few 100,000 people at most. But with Adobe, I felt like you would be reaching, with the work you do, you could reach millions, and you could really make an impact. And especially because it's creative, I just felt Adobe was a really good fit. And that's why I'm still there, right? So all the creative tools that are available, I get it. They're expensive, so they are, as you said, professional tools, right? It's not really just for dabbling around or anything. But I feel just making these accessible is really a good cause. So I felt, okay, let's go there. Let's make an impact. So again, I feel there's a really close connect to making art and to programming. Programming isn't just, it can, in the worst case, it can be, you have a list of tasks and you complete the tasks and you're just a tiny spinning wheel somewhere in this big clockwork that is a company. But in other companies and startups especially, you can really program complete features and you can see how users react to it. So you can really make things happen. And yeah, I feel they're not really that far apart. I see a lot of software engineers actually also doing art. It's not uncommon.
All right. And wow, I didn't actually know about the physics degree. I'm kind of impressed by that as well. Yeah, I failed physics 1 before I dropped out of college. I failed physics 1. I remember I dropped that subject as well. Now it's kind of impressive when I hear that you actually got a whole physics degree in pieces.
I would still relate to you. I hated physics in school. that was really not my thing, but it was a whole different thing to do it in university where you would actually see the applications of it and how it would work. That was so different from, oh yeah, how fast is this ball if you drop it from this building at 50 feet height or something? Like, that was just, nobody likes to solve arbitrary problems. So in that sense, just understanding that at the fundamental level, the world is actually probabilistic and is not deterministic as you think. Just learning that was really worth the whole degree, to be honest.
All right, sounds fun. And all right, so now we get to the juicy part, which is the time when you actually started working on your pixel art. We kind of briefly went over it by now, but and it's even like, said it on your Twitter about that. It says it started art at 30, no art education. So here's the thing for the people who are listening. Could you elaborate a bit on how it was for you, how you started, like, a little bit more in depth?
Let's say my art teacher hated me in school. I was always one of the worst art students in class. It was not, at least in Germany, how it works is you have like 1 hour of art every week or something. You would need to sculpture, you would need to draw something, and I was just horribly bad at it every time. If I needed to be creative, my art teacher was just not impressed, and I would just get mediocre scores every time, or mediocre grades. And when I decided, like, that was just a flat line where I thought, okay, art is not for me. You know what? I just don't do it. I'm a technical person. Let me do my programming. Let me do my physics. I was fine with that. So I just didn't do art at all. Until, as I said, like with the inspiring blocks, I was, maybe let me try it. I think I could do it. I think I could pull it off. When I started that, I felt like the reception was so nice. I just didn't get that feedback that I got back in school, where I felt like I'm completely uncreative and I'm completely untalented. And when I published stuff on social media, it was just the complete opposite. Of course, you always have people who give unsolicited feedback. That always happens. But I thought everyone was like, oh, this is such a nice scene, or I know where this place is, or this reminds me of something, or this makes me nostalgic. So really finding out that you can have an impact and can like just elicit some emotions for random strangers that stumble upon your art. That has really kept me at it. And you said it before, like pixel art always has the appearance of, I could probably do it. It doesn't look that difficult. Let me try it. There is a lot more to it, which I had to find out the hard way. You really have to put in the work. But still, it's such a nice medium. If you make an error, you can just go in and replace that pixel that you got wrong, right? It's so forgiving. You can delete something and you can really polish on a very, very microscopic level. So in that regard, like it's a very nice medium to just get started in. And if I could do it the same way again, I would. Like, I wouldn't change anything. Probably start sooner, as everyone would. But yeah, it's really sad that some people get discouraged in school, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, even with mathematics, like, here's the weird thing, I don't, as you even kind of said, I don't dislike mathematics or physics, and here was a huge problem with me when I was a child, was that I loved everything. I loved every major. I was interested in everything, It wasn't like, most people have this problem of, oh, I don't know what I like. My problem is I don't know what I don't like, because I was interested in, I still am in a bit. And the thing was for me that I actually enjoyed math, and people don't, because it's kind of ironic, because I kind of, for more different reasons, I failed math 1 at university 3 times, but it was all different reasons, that's the irony, And here's the thing, I enjoy actually studying mathematics, which is the most insane thing someone could hear from me. People don't believe me when I say that. But the thing is, I, like, when I was 14, I had a teacher, like math teacher, which, my older brother he was also his teacher as well. And my older brother was a really naughty student, he used to torment him, and he kind of put out his frustrations on me. Like, he used to, for no reason. I was a quiet, shy, innocent kid. I wouldn't do anything, but he used to, put his anger from my brother and other stuff on me for some reason. I don't know, which that really, made me discouraged about math and, just in general, stuff like that. But I'm fortunate enough to say I had really good physics teachers throughout my life. All of them were pretty cool people, which is something you don't rarely hear from physics teachers, and especially from my area as well, like from Iran. But yeah, and I still actually I still follow like letter journals and stuff from math and physics from time to time on Twitter or other stuff like that. I mean, it's a fascinating field by itself, and yeah, and kind of the same thing with you as art. And I don't know, maybe I have it on the list that I mentioned before, that the things that I need to go back to. Math and physics is on them as well.
Do it.
Yeah,
Do
well,
it. I
definitely.
find it's always wonderful if you find people who are passionate about what they do. And then it doesn't really matter which subject it is. It could be the most boring subject at school, but if you have a teacher that's passionate about it and actually wants to teach and is not just there to pay their rent, I feel like, yeah, that really gives you something for life. So,
Yeah, definitely. And here's an interesting question that I want to ask you. Who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most during this whole journey of like pixel art?
yeah, I mentioned 8 Pixel. So she's really been, I would say, the biggest inspiration. There's also, I'm probably butchering his name, Kirokazi, who is, he's more into the sci-fi side of things with pixel art, but he's been doing animations since I've seen my first pixel art. Basically, he's been around forever. And also Mark Ferrari. So Mark Ferrari as the one who's done art for the LucasArts games and for like Thimbleweed Park just recently. So those three, I would say, those are my main inspirations, at least for pixel art. For non-pixel art, I'm not really an art interested person, I must admit. So I do follow a bunch of people on Twitter and Instagram, but that's about it. But sometimes you have this one artist that you're like, I want to have all your work. I want to digest it. I want to live it and breathe it. So those three would be that.
All right, and here's the thing. I had a question for you. Like, are you still planning on doing more animation style stuff? Because like I know these are some like cliche, stereotypical answers or things you get from people, but I genuinely find them really relaxing and cozy for some reason. I kind of enjoy them sometimes. I swear, like someone probably used one of your pieces on YouTube and put a lo-fi soundtrack over it, like because it really works. I don't know if someone does it, but it sure has a potential for something kind of an art project like that.
A lot of people do it actually, for better or worse. I mean, if there's credit, I'm good with it. But I think one thing that I would try in the future is to make longer animations. I'm really, at least in the past, I've been limited to something like 10 seconds, 5 seconds. I think the longest one is about 15 seconds. And then came this huge project of where I made this whole music video for Alt J. And that was, I think, 5.5 minutes or something. So that was huge. That was a whole movie, basically. And I would probably want to find a sweet spot in between, where it's not just a few seconds that loop endlessly, but where there maybe you have a few different scenes that switch, or still an endless loop, but a bit longer, maybe a bit more storytelling in it. But as I said, just plans. Right now, I'm still in the 10-second range of all my animations because I said they take so long, and there's only so much patience that you can have for finishing an animation, right? I think they take 40 to 60 hours from putting the first pixel on the canvas to finishing the animation. And that's just a lot of time, right? You can only sit down for some hours on the weekend, and at some point you get frustrated and I want to push this out because you have new ideas that come creeping up. So you need to finish something and then start something new. But let's see. So open to everything.
All right, and a really interesting piece I saw on your Instagram was the one that you kind of put like 4 of your pieces from 2016, 2018, and 2020, like, the evolution of your art. I think that's kind of like inspirational as well. That of course, in the video version of the YouTube version of the podcast, everyone can see like a reel of all of your works on top of us right here. And yeah, I mean, that's there as well. Like, there's a crow, then there's like the ship, then there's like a cityscape, and then there's a road thing, like the road with the windmills and everything. And it just shows like how much you've technically progressed through this, especially in the last one. Like the reflections of have been like
Thank
implemented
you.
really well, and it just looks it like it's a nice mix of impressionism and realism. Like it's not the realistic pixel art that you're like, oh, it's boring, and but it's not like super like abstract stuff that you kind of can't communicate with. It's kind of like a nice spot in between, and I think the artist can do that really well. The art is really enjoyable and nice to see, pleasant to look at, and yeah, I mean that's my opinion on that. And here's the thing. Wait. Oh,
Yeah, thank
and
you.
speaking, my pleasure. Yeah. Is there anything you wanted
Oh,
to add?
I just wanted to say I published this on Reddit, I think 2 years ago, actually. And when I did that, people were really, what? That is the progression? I could do that too. This is only 4 years. I could pull that off. And I actually got a lot of sweet messages from people wanting to start art because they saw this. I said, oh my God, that is the best thing that could ever happen by just publishing this post and just showing what people could do or what someone could do, and people feeling inspired to just pick up the pen and start doing it, or just click pixel art on their smartphones. Something that actually happened. So I'm really super happy.
Yeah, here's the thing. This type of like posts, I really love them in art because, like, for example, you see a lot of these fitness posts when someone is like some skinny 60 kilogram dude. Then, like 2 years later, he's like, put on like 12 kilograms of pure muscle and he shows his transformation. It's the same with art, It's super inspiring to see people's consistency be visualized in front of them. And it's motivating, it's inspiring. And I don't know, to whoever said like, they can do that in 4 years, they're kind of lost. I mean, that's all you can say, about them. But yeah, I mean, I find it really, motivating for me as well, when I see people's like, progression, like, put together like this. And yeah, it gives me hope as well, that I should be more consistent. If I stay consistent, I might be able to, make one of those reels for my, whatever I'm doing. And the next thing is, of course, we've talked about, some of your future projects and plans, but I want to know, what are some of your plans, things, projects that you're working on right now? I mean, of course, if there's no NDAs involved.
Um, I am working on a music video right now, the second one. I can't say for whom, I can't say when it's released, but yeah, it's just great that once I started doing this music video thing, that more and more people came to me and asked for it. And of course, I cannot say yes to every project because I still need to have my full-time job on the side. But making this music video is really fun. And something else I have done is I started Android development. I just felt, okay, I have art and I have my programming skills. What can I do? So I made an icon pack for Android, and I think I'm at 1,000 icons now, which is insane, just the sheer amount. And that made me realize how hard it actually is. If they are only 20 by 20 pixels, and you have something like, I don't know, the Chrome logo or the Firefox logo, and you try to put that into 20 by 20 pixels, that takes you half an hour because you need to really find where do I need to put that pixel. So that was an interesting experience. And I think at some point I would want to make a tutorial book or a video series or something and really take it a bit further. I mean, you can publish your posts and try to inspire people, but maybe give them a head start. Maybe tell them some tricks that might make their lives easier, or just workflow tricks that they should adopt now before they get into bad habits, or things like that. So I have a YouTube channel created. I still need to figure out, like, like sit down, make a script, record it, and then publish it. So that's something I do have planned. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening. So we'll see.
Yeah,
More animations, music videos, apps.
awesome. And actually, I was going to mention, like, I kind of, because while you were, answering that question, my brain just went nuts. I was like, do you know what she should do? She should make devlogs on YouTube. And you said, yeah, that's your plan. Because honestly, like, you're the type of person that's like super consistently learning new stuff and improving their skills. And I think it would be really interesting for people who are like into art and just programming and just learning stuff in general, to see your progress as well. Like devlogs, I think would be like a great choice, because with devlogs, it's like, vlogs, you don't really have to script them that much. You just can write your points down on a sticker note and just shoot the video and just say whatever you want, then do like minor edits for the cuts. And I'm not saying this because you're on the podcast now, but I would actually subscribe, because I would love to see on a behind the scene process of sorry, my brain just behind the scene processes of your works, basically, from pixel art to app like app design things you mentioned, from app development to your work at Adobe, all that stuff mixed together. I think would be really interesting to see. And there are a lot of actual artists who make devlogs, for their upcoming projects, whether it be game development, whether it be or just art in general, And it's an interesting cozy niche that I personally watch on Twitch a lot, actually. And by the way, I also saw a link to your Twitch as well. By the way, for anyone who's interested, if you want her to stream again, you can go follow her on Twitch. Leave a nice message. You get the whole point, And kind of like the art community, that is kind of like it because it still feels a little bit kind of underground still in a lot of areas, artsy, which is kind of crazy to say, but not on Twitter anymore, because on Twitter the art is really, which I actually really like, don't get me wrong, but compared to, for example, a streaming platform like Twitch or devlogging and stuff like that, it's like it's a tight-knit underground group. I kind of like it, and even sometimes on Reddit. And that's my whole 2 cents on that. And do you want to add on anything to that?
I think just like everyone else, I'm just suffering from the imposter syndrome of going there and saying, okay, now I tell you my story and I think this is interesting. There's always a bit of like getting all your strength together and then actually doing it. Because frankly, there has always been in this time, and people sometimes forget that there has always been criticism as well. People who don't like pixel art, people who disagree with you, or people who think this is not pixel art because it's so high resolution. This exists, and you really need to. You need to. How should I put it? Endure it. You need to push through it. But I have seen people who got bogged down by it. Just by, you can have 100 wonderful comments, and then you have this one comment that is negative, and you think about that one all day. You don't think about the 100 positives one all day, right? So that's just something that sometimes holds me back, really. But as I said, if you have 100 nice comments, that is 100 people whose days you made nicer, and it's still worth it. But so one day I will do it. I hope it will bring value to some people. And I hope other people feel encouraged as well to start it and share their story, because there's so much value in seeing the story and the journey and not just in the finished results. The finished results is always polished, right? But you rarely see when people fail or when they discard an artwork and say, okay, I'm not going to follow through with this. This is shit because this, and this. And you can actually learn something from it.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, go with your own pace, see whenever you're ready to actually, get active on YouTube and other social medias. Of course, I get it, because here's the weird thing. I don't get that negative comments that much, because I don't think I haven't reached that level of audience to actually get negative comments that much. But like, for example, there was this guy who I made like a podcast like this, and then someone just commented on YouTube, the guy looks so uninterested. What a bad host. And I was, maybe at the time, like I looked super tired because I sometimes push through, not having it. Sometimes when I record a podcast, I haven't slept for 2 days, maybe out of exhaustion or stuff. But, it's kind of weird when you get stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you kind of, it's kind of sad to say, but you kind of get used to just blocking them. And, that's about it. And, but it's always worse when there's like stinky people who just, are stinky, doing the stinky things. What are you guys doing? Don't be stinky. Be clean. Don't be. And all right, so we've reached the final section and question of the podcast, which is called Final Word. And all right, let me explain to you what it means. Basically, imagine in a limited amount of time, in a couple of minutes, let's say, you have in that window of time, you have the opportunity to say anything from yourself, Stefanie Grunwald, to anyone who might be hearing and listening to this podcast at any point of time in the future. So from a human to another human being, what do you have to say? It could be anything, not just art related, by the way.
I would say never wonder what if, and just do it. Especially with trying out things, you don't need to tell anyone. Actually, I would encourage you to not tell anyone and just start new things, try them out, see whether they are for you. And especially with art, you might feel like you have to publish things on social media and you have to share it. And you really don't. You can just make it for yourself and be happy that you made it. Or just hide things that you feel are not worth sharing. There is really no shame in that. But I mean, if I would have started at the age of 20, it would have been 10 years more worth of art that I could have created, nice things I could have learned. And that is time lost if you look back to it. So if you feel like, no, I'm not going to try, that's not for me, or I feel intimidated by it, or everyone is so good and I'm not, I really don't think that you're inferior in any shape or form. Just go for it and try it out. And that's the thing. If you stick to it, as you put it, if you stick to it, you will improve. Necessarily. There is no way around it. And that is maybe why my one recommendation, if you have stuck to something and if you do it, do revisit your old works. Do go back. Don't think, oh, no, I didn't know everything back then and I will just not look at it, because it's always an opportunity to look at it and think like, oh, look how far I've come. It's always a bit embarrassing, I get that. But if you, and it's probably the same for you, if you look at very old podcasts, episodes, oh my God, I would do that so different today. That is actually, that tells you that you're still learning. How awful would it be that you look at your old works and they are just exactly the same? That would mean no progress. That would mean nothing learned. So do try out new things. Do look at your old works and just acknowledge how much you've learned. You don't need to show everyone, but you can just look at your old stuff and really examine it and say, oh, I got better at lighting. I got better at shapes. I got better at so many other things, and acknowledge that. And then be happy where you've come, because, yeah, you wouldn't be there if you hadn't started.
Awesome. It was a real pleasure. Thanks so much for coming by. And where can people contact you if they had any questions from you? Is your Instagram handle okay? If I leave it down in the captions as well?
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming by. And thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. I hope you really don't mind my messy background here. Like, it's not always like this, hopefully. And that's about it. Take care, everyone. By the way, of course, if there's any comments and critiques or anything, leave them down in the comments below or shoot me a message. I'll always read them out. And that's about it. Take care, everyone. Till next episode. Stay safe. Bye.